Hey guys, it's Karina with Karina Loves to Plan. Welcome back to my channel. So here I am for days 16 through 23. Just a sneak peek of everything here in my B6 Galen leather notebook. So this is where I'm keeping track of the inks. And in my Rhodia notebook, this is where I am transcribing Anne of Green Gables. So you can kind of see there. And then in my Hobonichi Cousin, which has a crumb on it. So there are 3 places that I am keeping track of my 30 inks, 30 days. Let's get started. Day 16 is Ferris Wheel Press Stroke of Midnight. And this was a sample that I bought from Van Ness ages ago, but just haven't ended up using. So I put a drop on my grid here in my Galen leather B6 notebook with the Tomoe River paper, and I swirl it around with the ink sample vial so I can get the most out of the swatch. And then it is inked up in my, what pen is this? Esterbrook Esty. Gosh, I'm having a day. Esterbrook Esty in the Nouveau Blue. And I actually don't mind putting shimmers into my pens. I have pen flush. I'm confident in that being cleaned out easily. And it was actually. It cleaned out very easily in this pen. So here I am writing in my B6 Galen leather notebook, just making a note like I normally would if I was doing my currently inked. So I am doing the little square to see how wet this nib and ink pairing is. And actually these two together were really great. The shimmer didn't clog the nib at all. I didn't have any hard starts with it. The fine nib, the fine Yovo nib in my Esterbrook Esty dealt with this really well. I really enjoyed the combination of these two together. And a lot of people, I think, ask me, how do you handle shimmer inks? A lot of people are scared off by shimmer inks. They're afraid of it clogging, but this one actually worked really well. I don't know if I would go with any finer nib. I think the fine Yovo nib is probably the finest I would go in terms of putting shimmer inks into my pens, and it worked out beautifully. The shimmer, while yes, very prominent at the beginning of the writing sample, was pretty consistent throughout, and this ink in particular also had quite a bit of sheen, a bit of red sheen to it. So it's a very interesting ink, and actually one that I would recommend trying, and I think it was a perfect match with the Esterbrook Esty in the Nouveau Blue. Next, I'm putting a few drops into my Hobonichi Cousin, and I'm using my sandwich bag technique to create these beautiful ink splatters or splotches or swatches or whatever you want to call them. But it creates such a cool, unique pattern, and it also enables you to see different, I guess, qualities or properties of the ink itself, because you can see the shimmer, you can see the sheening, you can see the shading. It's such a great way to swatch without using a Q-tip or anything like that, and I really love the effect of it. So then I'm going to go ahead and write in my to-do list and journal a bit. I really like how I formatted 30 days, 30 inks, because I'm using it in 3 different notebooks, and I'm making sure that I am taking the time to really write with this pen and ink pairing, because I've seen other 30 inks, 30 days where it's, you know, you're swatching with it, and others have done a journal entry and others have done transcribing, but I'm trying to do all 3 so I can really make the most of the pairing. And here I am writing in my Rhodia notebook where I'm transcribing from Anne of Green Gables, and this particular pen, I felt like I could have written more than the 2 pages that I had set out for myself. And there's Anne of Green Gables that I'm transcribing from, and look at the shimmer in this ink. Absolutely amazing. Such a fantastic pair, and I felt like I could have written with this for more because I love the Esterbrook Esty, and the shimmer ink did not clog this pen at all. Fantastic pairing for day 16. Day 17 is Taccia Ugu Isu Olive Green, another purchase from Van Ness. I'm not an affiliate for them or anything, but they have an amazing selection of ink samples. So I tried this based on actually some feedback from previous YouTube videos, and it is a gorgeous green. It does dry a little bit differently than the writing sample because I think there was just so much ink in this little drop, but it is gorgeous. So here I am writing out my, I guess, currently inked for the week in my B6 Galen leather book. And you can see the green in the writing sample is a little lighter than the ink swatch that I had done on the previous page. And I have it inked in my Sailor Pro Gear Slim Mono Nuts. And it is a beautiful combination. Writes actually average flow, average wetness, and it's very smooth. So here I am in my Hobonichi cousin doing my sandwich bag swatches. And just a side note, I have loved seeing other people's sandwich bag swatches on Instagram. So please keep sharing them with me because I love seeing what you guys do with that. It's such a simple way of creating really random, beautiful art. Love it. And it's also a great way, like I said, to show off the shading properties. And you can see a bit of sheening in the swatch behind my hand here. So I'm writing out my to-do list for the week as well as journaling. And I really enjoyed this combination of the Taccia Ugu Isu Olive Green with the Sailor Mono Nuts. And considering this is a medium fine nib, or one of the finer nibs that I have, it still flowed really, really well. So now in my Rhodia notebook, I'm placing 3 drops here, and then I'm going to go in with my ink sample vial to swirl it around and get my imperfect organic circles. And this is another way of ink swatching, and I really like the ink sample vial method because it's easy to clean. And most of us have ink sample vials laying around. So I am writing the name of the ink and then the pen, and then I'm going to do a little bit of transcribing from Anne of Green Gables. And I really enjoyed this combination. Now, the Rhodia paper is a bit of a smoother paper, but also it feels like certain inks and pens feel drier on this paper. But overall, really great combination, and I enjoyed using the two together. Day 18 is Monteverde pumpkin cake, and this one was a sample sent to be by Miss Marilyn Darling. And I really like the burnt orange of this color, and it's one I will probably keep in my collection for a little bit. So here I am inking up my Banu Talisman in Venus Hair, and I am actually in the process of selling this pen. This pen is a great writer. I just think that it might be slightly too narrow for my hand, but also I want to fund a different pen and have a different pen in its place. While I do enjoy writing with it, I think there are other pens that I would prefer in my collection over this one. That is a whole other story. But overall, the ink and pen together write beautifully. And then you'll be able to see once I do my sandwich bag swatches, this ink shades, it's just beautiful. It's a fantastic shading ink, and it's got a very wet flow. I really enjoyed writing with it on the Tomoe River paper as well as the Rhodia paper, but also combining it with the Schmidt nib on the Banu. The two together are a great, great combination, and I had no problems writing with the ink and the pen on the Tomoe River paper. And just a bit of a close-up here. Look at how well this writes in my Banu Talisman. Did I say Euphoria earlier? It's the Banu Talisman. And even in the writing sample, the ink just flows beautifully. So here I am putting 3 drops down in my Rhodia paper and then swirling it around with the ink sample vial to get the full shading effect. And gorgeous color, absolutely gorgeous. It shades beautifully. It has so many different, I guess, layers to it in the ink swatch. And I think for anybody who's a painter, this would be such a great painting ink. And again, combined with the Schmidt nib in the Banu Talisman, it is a fantastic pairing. Really great to write with. I didn't notice, ooh, almost wrote birthday. This is pumpkin cake. I didn't notice any dryness writing on the Rhodia paper. It flowed really well overall. And you can see here just how beautiful the ink is and the way that it pools as well. Really, really great ink, which I hope to use again in the fall. Day 19 is Taranishi or Taisha Roman Innocent Mauve, and this one was purchased from the St. Louis Art Supply store, and I'm a big fan of purple. Not a color that I necessarily would have thought would be part of my favorites, but I really like this purple, and I have it inked in the TWSBI Diamond 580 with a fine stub nib, and you can see the shading there. Gorgeous. And the fine stub nib really brings out the shading characteristics. Now, this fine stub was ground by Mark Bacchus, and it's a really great nib for anybody who wants to try a stub, but the 1.1 stub is just too big for you. But the stub nib, the line variation in the stub nib really shows off the shading in this ink. So I'm putting a few drops of the ink on my Hovenici Cousin for my journaling spread. And again, using the sandwich bag method. What I love about this method is that I never know what the swatches are going to look like. No matter how I put the drops on the paper, every single day is going to look completely different, just because there's so many factors, you know, how heavy the ink is, the way the paper is lying, the way that the sandwich bag goes down, the way that I move my fingers to move the ink around. All of that is so much to control that there's no way that I could get 2 ink splotches that look exactly the same. So here I am writing out my to-do list for the day, and you can see the ink there from the side, how beautifully it shades. I really enjoyed using this in this pen because the two together, great flow. There were no hard starts or skipping, and it was really a great ink to use with a stub nib because the shading just was shown off beautifully. And here I am adding a few drops into my Rhodia notebook, and I really have enjoyed the process of transcribing Anne of Green Gables. I read this book when I was younger, and it's funny rereading it now because I haven't read it in years, but rereading it now, there's some parts where I'm like, I remember that happening. I remember that happening. And to be able to write it down as well, you get the pleasure of rereading something, but also the pleasure of using this pen and ink combination. So I'm glad that I incorporated the transcribing into my everyday so that I have more opportunity to use a pen and ink combination, because this way I can get through more pens and more inks. Day 20 is Dominant Industry in their Pearl series. This is the Dawn ink, and this one was also sent to me by Miss Marilyn Darling. Amazing. Thank you so much. So grateful for all the inks that were sent to me. And this one is a lighter purple with a really pretty shimmer, and I have it inked in my Laban 325 with a medium stub that was also ground by Mark Bacchus. I do love my stub or cursive smooth italic nibs, but look at the shimmer. It reminds me of Sailor Manyo Nakayanagi as well as Ferris Wheel Press Blushing Mushroom, the combination of those two. And I'm just writing out the ink and pen combination in my B6 Galen leather notebook. So far, really enjoying the two. And no issues with the shimmer in this pen whatsoever. And then I'm going to add a few drops to do my sandwich bag swatches in my Hobonichi Cousin. And then I accidentally wrote with the TWSBI Diamond 580 on this page. Oops. But here I am writing my to-do list for the day. And I actually really enjoy using the Laban 325. It's a great size in my hand. Very similar to the SD, but maybe just a tiny bit bigger. Very comfortable to write with. And then writing out my journal entry for the day. Again, like I said, no issues with the shimmer in this pen. Really great writer, great flow. I really enjoyed it. Next, I'm putting the drops of ink into my Rhodian notebook and swirling it around with the ink sample vial. Such a simple method for swatching to great effect. Look at that. And then once it dries, you'll be able to see the gorgeous shimmer. So here I am writing out which ink it is and what pen I'm using, and shortly you'll see just how beautiful this ink is once it's dried. Day 21 is Diamine Holly, and this one was sent to me by Leanne of Leanne Likes. This is one of her favorite inks, and I could see why she really liked this. This is a gorgeous kind of dark forest green, and I paired it with my Pelikan M605 in the green and white stripes with a smooth cursive italic. I just realized the last three pens have either a stub or a smooth italic on it. You can tell what nib grinds I like. This particular ink, yes, goes down green, but once it dries has a very heavy red sheen. I don't know if this ink is necessarily for me, but I love the green color. I just feel personally that the sheen, once dried, kind of took over the whole writing sample. So I'm putting a few splotches here on my Hobonichi Cousin, and this really shows off the base green color, but also shows off the sheen. So I think in the writing sample, it's hard because of how much ink goes down from my pen, but with the sandwich paper bag swatching, I'm able to spread out or thin out the ink a little bit so you can see the base color and then the sheen versus it all just being that red sheen. So this pen, my Pelikan M605, is actually quite a wet writer, so you'll be able to see that the writing sample is generously a lot of sheen, which is not something I prefer on a normal day-to-day basis, but it was nice to give it a try. Then I'm putting a few drops into my rhodia paper, and it's always interesting to me to see the difference in the way that the ink swatches on the rhodia paper versus the Tomoe River paper. And I don't know if I'm going to keep using rhodia paper for transcribing after 30 inks 30 days. I do have 2 other Hobonichi notebooks with Tomoe River paper, so I might go back to transcribing in that. But it has been fun using the rhodia paper. I forgot what day it was, so I had to check. And you'll see that I've made mistakes on which days are here as well. So you can see there on the side how the ink is drying, and I'm going to show you shortly just how much sheen is here. Like you can see in the writing sample, there is a lot of sheen there. So not necessarily something I prefer, but it was really fun to use. Day 22 is KWZ Brown Pink. And this was an ink that I purchased recently from Van Ness. And I have to say right off the bat, it's purple. It is not brown pink unless you're trying to really break it down. I'm sure maybe in the chromatography, I don't do chromatography, so I wouldn't know, but maybe it's broken down into brown and pink. But I've inked it up in my tailored pen co in the honeycomb honey melomel, and this pen has such a smooth fine nib on it, plus this ink as well is quite wet, so the two together were fantastic. I really enjoyed the writing experience of the brown pink with this pen. Very smooth on the Tomoe River paper and also smooth on the rhodia paper that I'll be writing with shortly. But I'll be putting a few drops into my Hobonichi cousin here. Oh, there's Lucy. You can see the way that this ink is starting to shade once I create the sandwich paper bag swatches. I really like this ink, but it is not brown pink. It is purple. So beautiful to write with as well. I really enjoyed the two together, and I could have written more than the page in my journal as well as the 2 pages in my rhodia notebook. Once again, a few more drops in my rhodia notebook for transcribing Anne of Green Gables. I'm really enjoying the act of transcribing because it is allowing me to reread a book, but also, like I said earlier, I get to use the pen and ink combination more than just journaling on a page. I get to use it for at least 3 pages of writing. And this 30 inks 30 days has allowed me to try out so many different inks, but also use all of my pens in such a short space of time. So I've really enjoyed that part of it. But you can see in the circle here, the way that it's drying and pooling, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous ink. And you'll see shortly once it's dried and in the dried writing sample, how beautiful it shades. Really beautiful ink. Day 23 is Laban Hermes Sky Blue. Again, another one from Van Ness Inks. And I have a lot of love for Laban inks. I've tried Laban Hermes, Aphrodite, as well as there's another one, Demeter. anyway, I really like the color and the flow of Laban inks, and I've inked up my Laban Rosa in lilac, and I thought the two were a great combination. This ink has such a great wet flow, but this pen as well with the medium nib, the two together are just fantastic, because the medium nib with the wet flow shows off the shading in this ink beautifully. So here I am doing the swatching in my Rhodia notebook, and I really enjoyed writing with this. I'm so glad that I paired the two, and I'm using my Laban Rosa because it wasn't that long ago where I said this was my ultimate favorite pen, and it's still up there in my top 5, and using it with such a great ink. I'm so glad that I was able to use the two together, and you can see the way that this comes out of the pen creates great shading in the writing. And then lastly, putting it into my Hobonichi Cousin, where I'm going to do the swatches with the sandwich bags, and it's just phenomenal the way that this ink pools. I really love the combination of this pen and this ink, and I really like this color, this kind of light sky blue color, going back to my favorite childhood color of blue. Gosh, what am I saying? I loved blue when I was a kid, and I think it was this type of light blue that I really was drawn to. So using it in my journal for today, and just a pleasure, absolute pleasure to write with.
Alright, so I'll take you guys through a quick flip through of how all of the inks look in my different notebooks. So the first notebook is my B6 Galen leather notebook, and I keep track of all the inks here. I'm going to zoom in. So there's the full calendar so far, but I want to say that for days 16 through 23 you can see them here, and it's funny looking at this because you can kind of see what colors are the ones that I normally look for in my ink samples, but so far really liking the way that this is coming together. So let's flip to the actual days 16 to 23 page. So here is days 16 through 23, and if you guys follow me on Instagram or TikTok, I do the daily ink swatches, and I love how it comes together as an art piece like that, but also just the way the page crinkles. And then you can see as well the different characteristics like the shimmer and the sheen, the shading, and then down here the Laban Hermes actually kind of combined with the Diamine Holly, so it created this own sheening teal green here, which was really cool. And then the shimmer in the Diamond Industry Dawn. But it's just so interesting to see all of the inks together on one page like this. So that is what is in my Galen leather notebook. Next we have my Hobonichi Cousin, and here I keep track of the inks that I'm using on the currently, and you can tell I've already gone ahead a couple of days. But then for journaling, start at day 16, and yes, there is some bleed through from the previous page, so the Ferris wheel press Shangri-La kind of bled through here a little bit, but not too badly. And then you can see the green of Taccia Ugu Isu olive green, the Monteverde pumpkin cake. I love this one, the Taranishi Innocent Mauve. Really love that. Did end up selling that Twisby Diamond 580 already, and I'm in the process of selling that Benu Talisman that I just wrote that with. And then we have Dominant Industry Dawn. This was a lot lighter than I thought it would be, but it was still very pretty. And then we have Diamine Holly, which is very sheeny. Look at that sheen. It's just a bunch of sheen. The green is beautiful, but the sheen kind of overtakes the writing sample. And then you have KWZ Brown Pink, which if it wasn't named Brown Pink, I would be happy with it. But because it's named Brown Pink, I'm like, it's not brown pink, it's purple. It reminds me of Sailor Shikiori Harahara is what this looks like. And then we have Laban Hermes. I really like this light blue, sky blue type of color. So that is my Hobonichi cousin. And then we'll go to my Rhodia notebook where I transcribe a few pages from Anne of Green Gables. And I like this because it does allow me to really get to know the pen and ink combination. I use it in my journal, I use it in here, so I get at least 3 pages of writing with that pen and ink, and it's better for me than just seeing it on a swatch. I actually get to experience the ink when writing with it. So there's Stroke of Midnight, the Taccia Ugu Isu Olive Green, such a pretty color. Then Monteverde Pumpkin Cake, Taranishi Innocent Mauve, really pretty. Dominant Industry Dawn, pretty color, but a little light. Reminded me a little bit of Sailor Manyo Nekoyanagi or Blushing Mushroom from Ferris Wheel Press. And then you have Diamine Holly. Again, you can definitely see the sheen here. KWZ Brown Pink and Laban Hermes. All right, so that is days 16 through 23, and I'm really enjoying this because I get to use all of my pens this month, and I get to use so many inks. There are some inks that I do want to use for longer than the day, but that just means that I'm probably going to keep the sample, and then the ones that I feel like I've used it, you know, to the capacity that I need to use it, those are the ones that I will probably end up giving away or giving away locally, things like that. Again, that is it for me. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I really appreciate your comments and you guys following me along on this journey. Thanks again for watching and have yourselves a great day.